Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Jakubowski, and today we're going to look at the transactional analysis that my organization performed on the Google Merchandise Store. So my organization, Dave Jakubowski LLC, was brought into the Google Merchandise Store to review their transactional data. They wanted a better understanding of the demographics of who was completing and following through with transactions. We performed this analysis from November 17th to November 23rd, 2017. If you're not familiar with the Google Merchandise Store, they offer all things Google, Android, and YouTube regarding merchandise. The store sells everything from apparel and bags to electronics. So when we look at basic demographics, we break that down into three different categories: location, purchaser, and method. We took a look and analyzed two data sets associated with each category. We reviewed transactions by country and state under location category, transactions by gender and age under the purchaser, and transactions by browser and device under the method. So first we're going to take a look at the transactions by country. And we're not going to go through each line of this, but we're going to pick out just a couple of big things. So first and foremost, for the defined time frame, there was 18,379 total users. And to identify who a user is someone who initiated one session during the defined time frame. And there were also a total of 556 total transactions, and a transaction is defined as a completed purchase. So just when we take a look at the top 5 countries and users, the US has a total of just over 8,000 users, followed up by India with just about 1,200 users, the UK with just over 1,000, and then Canada and Germany rounding out the top 5 with 687 and 580 respectively. When we take a look at the transactions by country, we're going to also take a look at the top 5. The US had a total of 537 transactions and then significantly dropped off. Canada had a total of 11, followed by Hong Kong with 2, and Germany and France rounded out the top 5 with 1 each. Now, the number of users aren't necessarily leading to transactions. When we take a look at India, they're the second most users, but only equated to 1 particular transaction. When we reviewed this data, there was a user flow. We reviewed the user flow across a week. The transactions and users really dropped off over the weekend and then picked back up at the beginning of the work week, and then kind of tapering off as well. That actually didn't surprise us. When you think about yourself, you're spending time in front of your computer Monday through Friday, probably have some extra time during the workday, want to take a look at everything. So you go ahead, jump on, but over the weekend, that slowly drops off. So that's really what we take a look at from a country by country standpoint. Taking a look at it by state, we just jumped in and really took a look at the top 1 state here. And the number 1 state was really California and then New York. Now, what's interesting by state, which is one thing that we'd really like to take a little bit more detail in. We know that Google has offices across the US, and their main headquarters is in California in the Silicon Valley. That really leads us to believe as to why there is a significant uptick in users in California and more transactions. We really like to take a deeper look into that at some time to really pinpoint where in the state those transactions took place. So along with the time, because I know when you get into bigger organizations, you can open up sales on the merchandise store for your employees. Really want to see if, on a state-by-state basis, if those transactions are tied directly to employees. When we take a look at the transactions by gender, we look at a total of just over 10,000 defined users, over 7,000 of them being male, just over 3,000 of those being female. Along with that, total transactions, 381. 283 associated with males, and 98 associated with females. So when we look at that, 1 in every 25 males is completing a transaction versus 1 in every 31 transactions is completed by a female. So one of the big things, again, taking a look at the user flow, it drops over the weekend, but then picks up again over the work week. Now we're going to take a look, when we get into the recommendations, that's going to be tied more. Our recommendations are going to come kind of tied directly to the gender. When we get into age, one of the big things that really jumped out to me in here, and I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but the highest age group was our 25 to 34, followed by 18 to 24. You know, that doesn't surprise me at all when you take a look at the different generations. Number one, in the workplace. Number two, just in general. The millennial workplace is really, the millennial generation is really tied to the trendy type of techie stuff. You know, that I think ties directly into them going out and purchasing and completing these particular transactions on this site. One of the other big pieces within here is the age group of 55 to 64 of 1 in every 92 individuals within that demographic is following through with a transaction. So would like to get a little bit more deeper into that as to why those transactions drop off significantly with that demographic age group, but surprisingly pick back right up from the 65 plus age group, with 1 in every 25 of those individuals is completing a transaction, I'm sorry. When we get into the different browsers, now the next two categories really surprised me, looking at browsers and different devices. From a browser standpoint, Chrome followed by Safari and Firefox are your top 3 in browsers used to complete a transaction. And the number of transactions really pick up with Chrome and then significantly drop off with Safari and Firefox. Again, I don't think this really surprises me because Chrome is a part of the Google family. So utilizing Chrome, maybe again going back to employees, following through with purchases, but again, the Chrome browser is significantly higher than all the other browsers. But again, that's also part of the Google family, so maybe that doesn't surprise me as at all. The one big piece that really did surprise me is the devices. Now, when we take a look at these devices, when we look at the users utilizing these transactions, just over 5,600 users have a defined device. The top 3, or top 2 we'll say, is being Apple iPhone and Apple iPad, and then significantly dropping off utilizing some of the Google devices. And then the transactions with are also grouped through the iPhone, and number of transactions also picked up with the iPhone as well. Now, this doesn't surprise me, just with some personal research that I did, is number one, utilizing the store on a computer-based operating system was much easier than utilizing it on a mobile device. And that's something that'll come up more in the recommendations as well. So now when we take a look at a quick review of everything, number one, we were just brought in to just strictly look at the transactions for these couple of demographics. One of the big things that I think I would have liked that would have probably made it easier is we had to look at each of these as segmented, looking at the country to the state to the gender to age. I think would have made everything easier and give us even a bigger pictures if all that data could overlap. To get a little bit deeper into everything, One thing that we weren't asked to do was actually tie revenue to those transactions. We were strictly asked to just look at the transactions. And then the other thing to get even a deeper picture as everything is to take a look at those Google offices and where they are tied into those different locations where those transactions are taking place. A couple of the insights that we talked about. Number one, as we've touched on throughout the presentation, is the lack of usage over the weekends versus the weekdays. Again, that's probably leading into the users having more outside activity, aren't necessarily sitting down on their devices Saturday and Sunday. Monday really pick back up. You're bored at work, need to break away from it. You pull up a website, you pull up your phone, do a quick search on the site, maybe you complete a purchase. The other thing that was really maybe alarming was the lack of mobile activity. You know, when you take a look at the different generations today, the younger generations, they're carrying around multiple phones, probably multiple tablets. They're a very mobile-centric group of individuals. Really surprises me that most of the activity actually took place on a PC-based browser than actually through their phone. Now, some recommendations that I would bring up to you guys based upon what we found. More advertising. There's nothing advertising the merchandise store. Get that out there. Get some more activity through there. Create a mobile app. When I went and looked and did my research through the phone, it was a mobile-based site. It wasn't necessarily an app. Make it easier for your these potential customers to complete a purchase. Create an app. Everything has an app. And then create some more diversity for your merchandise selection. If you want to get more females involved in the browsing to completing a transaction, there needs to be some more female-based merchandise on the site. That would definitely pick up that transactions from there. So thank you guys very much for listening to my presentation. Looking forward to your feedback.